So now I'll get to what Laurel actually asked me to talk about, and that's RSS. So let me, where do I want to go from this? Let me go back to Professor Hacker. So what you're looking for is a little symbol like this. So sometimes it will be in a box and it will say RSS. Sometimes it will have the orange signal symbol. But that is the symbol that an RSS feed is available. One of the biggest challenges we have with dealing with web content is that we have to go to all the different websites to see what's going on. So for instance, if each one of you had a blog, I would need to go to each web page to see what you're doing. And the idea of RSS is that the content is pushed to me. So I don't go seek it out, it is pushed to me through what is called an RSS aggregator or an RSS reader. So that is a central location where all of the information is being pushed to you, so you can go and scan the updates on 10, 20, 30 different websites all at one time. So that's where we're going to go next. There are 3 different readers or aggregators that I'm going to focus on. I'm going to show you how you tag websites, and then we'll talk about what can be done with these in class. So let's see. In each case, I'm probably going to have to sign in. So NetVibes is the first RSS aggregator that I started working with. It has some good points, it has some bad points. So this was a piece that I added today, which turned out hasn't been updated since last February, and that's why it's blank. So I'm simply going to delete it for the moment. So this reads like a newspaper. We've got a bunch of different columns. So each one of these boxes is a feed that I have set up. So you can tell that I'm thinking about environmental stuff. So I've got a website that keeps me updated on Great Lakes and other water issues. And these are the latest posts on that website. Down here I have the journal Inorganic Chemistry. Most journals these days will have an RSS feed that will push content to you. This happens to be pushing the weather to me. I can delete boxes as I want to. So, and there's a bit more down here. So, one of the things I like about this one in particular is that there are pre-selected groups of feeds that you can tie into. So I do like that about NetVibes. So if we want to add feeds, then we go up here to add content. So there are different categories that I can browse, and it will give me some options. And so I simply click add, and it will ask me to verify that I really want it. NetVibes has a searchable box. So I haven't tried this. We'll see if I can pull it up. Nope. Okay, so it's not finding it off of keywords. Certainly I can find different environment pieces that I may want to add. So NetVibes is very good about giving me options. So how do I add Professor Hacker if I can't get it to pull up? So what I'll do is simply say add a feed. And then, actually you can do this in either way. Oh, that's right, that's why I like this one. Processing. All right. let me backtrack. What I'm going to do for NetVibes is I'm going to cut and paste the URL. The downside of NetVibes is you saw that it was ready to add it. It's not going to add it to NetVibes. It's going to add it to Google. And therefore, actually I'm not sure it's going to add it to Google because I'm not logged in right now. But we'll see how that goes in a minute. But so what I can do is simply cut and paste the URL. I can find the right spot. And add the feed. And then I have to tell it to add. So when I go back out, hypothetically, Professor Hacker should be there somewhere. There it is, up at the top. So that's all it takes to add each one of your feeds. So in order to set up your RSS, you're probably going to want to invest a little bit of time in it just to figure out what your major feeds are and then just add them as you go. So that's NetVibes. I generally found the searching capabilities on NetVibes to be a little bit better than on the two Google readers. So this is all NetVibes. So let me. Oddly, this is not the Google Doodle that came up just an hour ago in my office. So what I did was I went to google.com. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off and sign in. Right. All right, so I'm now signed into Google. Google rates your password by how strong it is. Do you have capital letters and lowercase letters? Do you have numbers? Do you have punctuation? And so as you're creating your password, it's going to rate the strength of it. So I find that I have a variety of weak passwords, which are all letters, and strong passwords, which have a large number of different qualities to them. So I'm reminding you of this because that's how I remember its password, is it's my strong password. So the place I'm going to start here is iGoogle. So this is my home page on iGoogle, and I can set this up to be my home page of my browser so that if I open my browser, then this is what comes up. It's got this similar newspaper style format that NetVibes had. It has dumped some content onto here. So I didn't ask it for YouTube. So I'm actually going to get rid of that. But I've spent a little bit of time here working on Tree Hugger and Real Climate are two of the blogs that I wish I read more. So having an RSS reader for me is the first step towards not having to go and find them, having to just go to one place. So what I can do from here is this is the existing content and I can add stuff. So iGoogle gives you lots of options. You can browse a little bit. You can search for gadgets. Those are feeds. iGoogle has a little bit more playful stuff. So we have a hamster, we have turtles, but we also have sports and finance, and I can certainly pull up some environmental links. The searches are going to give you the high level or the more common hits. My understanding is that one of the most popular blogs for the environment is the Tree Hugger blog, and that's not coming up. So what they're doing at the moment is they're really tapping the major news feeds rather than the major environmental blogs. So they're not necessarily going to be sorting for you on that. Where did I want to go for that? So going back to Professor Hacker, if I subscribe to Professor Hacker, then I think, nope. I've been trying to work through several of these all at one time. So let me go back to home. Alright, so it doesn't seem to have added here, which means it's in the Google Reader. I haven't completely sorted the difference between iGoogle and the Google Reader. But what I'm going to do now is show you the Google Reader. I liked iGoogle for the newspaper aspect. It means that I can kind of browse a whole bunch of websites all at one time. And so what it'll do is it'll give you the top 3 most recent feeds on whatever you're working from. So if we go to more, so this gets us into all of the different Google tools, and we want to go down to Google Reader. So this is another way of accessing all of your blogs or journals that are publishing. So Google Reader has a different look to it. All right, let's see if we can go to home. And this is not the view, this is the swapping computer challenge. So this is not the view that I was getting from my computer. So what I'm now getting is titles, but I'm also getting abstracts. So that's an advantage of Google Reader. And so basically I get a list of the top feeds and a little bit about them, so I can see whether or not I want to read them. My subscriptions are over here. Okay, this is the view I'm accustomed to. So you can click on a blog or click on a feed and then see what you've read, what you haven't read, what looks interesting, and scan it that way. So if you are looking for a feed or a source that has a whole bunch of posts, if you want to look at the table of contents for a journal, this is probably an easier format to view than the iGoogle. And you can go back and forth between the two of them. And I think, yep, I'm not sure where, I don't know where my Professor Hacker landed. So let me show you another. There are a number of different styles of RSS feeder or RSS feeds. So I want to point out this RSS, which I loved, because it's allowing me to click. I want this to go into my Net5s account. I want this to go into Google. They're not all this nice. So you've done the hard part. You can see that you can cut and paste the URL if you need to, but you can absolutely add this to Google. And then you usually have to do some kind of verification. And so now that's in my Google Reader. So this is the best way that I've found to organize information that's coming in from a lot of different spaces into one place. So from a personal perspective, this is extremely valuable. What do you do with it in class? I can tell you what I did with it in class, and I used it in my inorganic chemistry class. And my idea was that if I use the questions out of the textbook, then they're 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, and I wanted the students to see that the information that they're learning is going right along, can be applied to cutting edge work that's coming out in publication on a daily basis. And so what I did, the first time I did it, was I had all the students set up an RSS reader. I had them all set up the feed to inorganic chemistry. And then each week, when I would give them a problem set, I would look at what had been published in my RSS feed from inorganic chemistry, and I would write questions based on that. And I will say it was challenging, because you never know if the topic you're working on is going to come out in that feed that week. And I learned from several people, the Lord will provide. And it was just amazing that when I needed a carbonyl compound, there was one being published. So it certainly worked out well in the first year, that somehow I was always getting exactly what I needed in the feed. I've been a little more flexible since then. The reason that this worked wonderfully for me, I was more aware of the current literature than I ever had been before. But it isn't actually required for the students to have the RSS feed, because I have to give them the citation of the journal. So they can find it simply by going through the citation of the journal and not having to go through an RSS feed. So I haven't found a way of requiring the students to use the RSS feed in order to access the information, because there's always another way to do it. So ideally, I think what you would look for is a way to use the newspaper view to survey what's going on this week, rather than having them go and fish out a specific piece of information. But probably the power of the RSS feeds is in having very, very current, up-to-date information pushed to you, so that you are looking at it, the students are looking at it, so you're not just talking theory, you're talking application of what's happening right now. It also gives you a different perspective than necessarily what's in the media. So, in the United States, we don't pay a whole lot of attention to foreign policy. People outside the United States look at our foreign policy, but we don't look at our foreign policy. There was a major, I suppose you would call it a chemical spill in Hungary this past week. And that did hit the Hartford Current. And that's something that is going to come up in my environmental class. But I happen to be reading that part of the paper on that given day, because I wouldn't necessarily have seen it. Whereas having a more focused news feed is going to give me BP oil spill and the chemical spill in Hungary, and what's going on in, I think, Alabama with a lot of contamination that the people didn't get told about. So using RSS, you can get much more focused feeds. You can also get the New York Times is on one of my readers. So you can find out what's going on CNN, you can find out what's going on in the New York Times. If you miss a couple days, they'll all still be there. So I'm going to take a break for a moment of lecturing and ask if you have any questions. Lisa?
You said the first step was to have the students set up an RSS feed. So what you're saying is they need to get an account with either iGoogle or whatever, and they subscribe to the things you want them to subscribe to, or are you providing the things that you want them to read?
The way I did it originally was I required them to, they were working on Net5s, and I required them to set up the feed to inorganic chemistry.
On Net5s?
Right.
Or whatever.
Yes, so whichever aggregator you choose to use. I think I will probably eventually land on iGoogle and Google Reader. So I'm transitioning out of Net5s because I'm not sure how well it's going to be supported. So my recommendation would be for one of the two Google systems, simply because it's a robust company, it's well supported, and because of the network of utilities and tools in Google, that's probably going to give you the most flexibility. But yes, so they would get a Google account and then set up, iGoogle is automatically one of the options. And so as soon as you get an account, you have an iGoogle homepage, it makes it for you. You can choose whether you want the beach in the front or pretty colors or whatever. But from there, very specific instructions on how to set up the feed.
and you tell them which ones you want them to choose?
I probably would. I'd ask my students later on, did they add any additional feeds? And about half of them had added additional feeds. So you can get sports scores, you saw that you can get the weather. So they can tailor the homepage to what interests them. So there should be some content there, but there can also be, you can get your hometown newspaper sometimes. So there's a lot of different things that you can use to personalize the that front page. And so it may be that one of the first things to do is to give them an assignment of, you need to create your homepage with the RSS aggregator, put it in newspaper view, and give me a picture of it. So what does your homepage look like? That might actually be very interesting. So why are these pieces here? I mean, that's a kind of RPW thing, of starting off with, why did these things speak to you? So that's foundation for a writing assignment there. So yes, I wouldn't want to clamp down on what's on their feed. I would want to have certain elements there, but I wouldn't want to have
Oh, okay, so you
necessarily
wanna see what they come up with
yeah,
on their
to
own,
some
and
extent.
then,
Anyone else?
Yeah, well, other than sort of the interface, what's the difference between Google Reader and iGoogle?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. So you kind of flip a coin when you're deciding which one
Right.
to use.
Well, this really came from a certain person saying, so Laura, how would you like to give a talk on RSS? And I said, okay, Laurel. So I started playing around with iGoogle and Google Reader about a month ago.
Okay.
So that actually was not the last minute part. So I'd heard of Google Reader and was a little more curious about iGoogle. And I'm not sure technically what the difference is.
I think it's old school and new school. The Google Reader looks more like news groups used to look, and if you're used to that, the listservs, remember listservs and
Right.
news groups, if you're used to that, it's kind of old school. And everything iGoogle is now more web page look, and everything's in one place, it's more
Right.
active.
Right.
And that's kind of the more, today's generation, college kids would like that. And I think more academic people would probably like this more simpler text-based, not so fancy, not so active.
All right, let me see if I can go back to iGoogle. Because there's one of them that you can toggle back and forth. And I think it's this one. I think iGoogle, you can go to the Google Reader. Look, I suspect, yes, just extrapolating on what Lisa said, I think Google Reader is older and iGoogle is probably newer.
Well, then it looks like you can add gadgets to this one, maybe you can't add gadgets to the
Good
other one.
point,
So this
yes.
is more like, it's a reader, Reader Plus.
This would be your
Right.
place for everything,
Right.
all your little.
We can have hamsters and turtles on iGoogle
Yep,
and
I want
not
that
little
hamster.
games and, yeah.
right.
In this context, I know what gadgets are in vacation. What are gadgets here?
Groovy little pieces of software that do stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like
Like
say
a
That's
calculator.
It's a fancy term for stuff in a box.
Got it.
That's my, does anyone want to embellish or
That
correct?
is the best I've ever heard.
Okay. It seems that each element is called a gadget, so whether it's a feed or a clock or whatever, it seems to be, or a hamster, it's a gadget.
Okay.
It's a tool, that, it
Yes.
gives you the time or the weather or.
Yeah. Lisa?
On Net Vibes, you can switch. That's the one where you can switch
That's
between
the
the
one.
reader view
Okay.
and the widget view.
Okay.
And that's, the comparison is iGoogle is like Net Vibes widget view, and Google Reader is like Net Vibes
Okay.
reader view.
Thank you very much. Right. Laurel, is there anything else that you wanted me to?
I would like to ask a question, to go back, you were hitting subscribe buttons,
Uh-huh.
so in one of them it gave you a choice, subscribe, and you would say that one.
Right.
And so how, if you don't have those options, is it whatever you have open at the time, is it aggregator, is that what's happening? It sounded like you were a little like, you were uncertain which one it was gonna be added to as a.
Okay, thank you for asking that, that's a good point. So, I have 3 different aggregators, and we again have the push-pull issue. So if you're sitting in it, so the most reliable way to get your feed in is to copy the RSS URL and put it into the box in the aggregator that you wanna use. That's a little more cumbersome. So if you have a button on the RSS that will allow you to push the button and point you towards which feed you go to, then that's great. If it just says, great, you can subscribe to this feed, then I'm not sure where it goes. So pushing a feed to an aggregator is less exact than pulling it in sitting on the aggregator. And as I have obviously illustrated, sometimes I don't know where it goes. My thought was it defaults to one of the Google systems, but I'm not sure that that's the same, or that that's the case. And I'm not sure that.
Now, why would it default? Is that because Google predominates, or because that was what you had open? I'm not understanding why it would default to Google.
I think Google will.
That was my question, is it
Right.
something Google set up with that particular site to say default to Google Reader if this person has Google Reader? I don't, if somebody else knows that answer, you know.
Personally, I don't see how it could default into anything unless you were logged in. You'd have to, I'm sure, if you go to a different page, they might be set up differently, and if Google was an option, you'd have to give them your Google ID, wouldn't you?
Right.
Actually, we have an answer to this. I think
Oh.
Charlie is one of
Oh,
our
a
senior
video
assistants,
person
and
is.
he sounds like he might have an answer for you.
What's happening is Internet Explorer actually has a built-in reader to its favorites in
Oh,
Internet Explorer 8.
okay.
So if like you open your favorites, that professor hacker should be in there. Or like the little button to the left of all your tabs.
Little button to the left. Oh, over here?
Yeah. No, the other one.
Next one.
Oh.
There it is.
There we go. All right.
So
And
that's how they're keeping track of it.
Thank you.
I bet you that's what's linked to that button up there too, because when you're on a page that has an RSS feed, that button turns orange. Over there next to the home button. If you were like on a
Oh,
page.
yep.
Yeah, that will turn orange when a
Oh,
page
so
just has a
it's
feed.
bad.
And I bet if you click that, it automatically adds it into your list.
That could be.
But then that would only be on this computer. That would be the difference. What you are doing, you can get to anywhere.
Right.
This would only work on this computer.
Right. Good point. Thank you. All right. Anyone else?
And what was the student reaction? Did they like it? Did they give you reaction about using it, or what was their reaction?
Well, and the key was, it wasn't RSS, it was whether or not I was using. The real take home was the fact that I was using current literature and I was making them go into the literature in order to get answers to questions. So they learned how to look at a figure, they learned what were the components of the paper. So they really liked having access to the current literature and having that woven in. But again, RSS was not required to do that. It guilt tripped me into reading more. But for the student's perspective, I don't think they used it. Not particularly, not when you can just go to the library website and put in the citation and you're there. So I will say that I have done a considerable amount of presentation and symposium organizing in the Division of Chemical Education in the American Chemical Society, and I haven't seen anyone who has found a really effective way of using RSS in the classroom that requires the use of RSS. So I'm still on the lookout for ideas, but I've moved away from it just because there's always another way to get there. So, and I'm not sure that the chemistry environment is the right one to use RSS as it might be used to get a general idea of what's going on in the world.
Just wondering what level the students were?
I used it at, let's see, RSS was used for juniors and seniors, Anyone else?
Do you have a copy of the form that you used, or that you gave them to, evaluate websites?
I do, if you email me, I'm sure I can dig that up.
Okay.
Or if you email it to us, we'll distribute it to the, do other people want it? Yeah.
My only, and I'll ask for advice on this, when I created it, it was from I adapted it from 2 forms on the web, and one person gave me permission to do whatever I wanted, and the other person was, no, you have to use it exactly as I used it, and you can't make any adaptations. And I finally came to the point of, you don't own who's the author of this page. So that's my only, so I cited both sources of where I took the information from, but I don't have permission to publish from the second source. But I would assume that I can use and share. So that's my only reservation, but other than that, I'd be happy to.
We'd have to take a look at
Sure.
it. So we'd have to take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, my
See.
guess would be that, distributing, sharing it with colleagues
Right.
is different than publishing.
Right. That would make sense to me. So, yes, I will.
I have a very liberal interpretation. I mean, I'm faithful to it, but I still interpret it liberally at fair use.
Yes. Yes, that makes sense. All right. Thank you all for coming out on
Thank you
Friday.
very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.